Part 1. The Galactic Fear Archive floated in the empty space between two dead stars. It was old. Some said it was the oldest building in the galaxy. They had built it long before most species learned to make fire, and they had filled it with information about one thing only: fear. Every species felt fear. This was a fact as true as gravity. Where there was life, there was something that life wanted to run away from. The archive existed to record all of it. Every nightmare, every phobia, every deep and ancient terror that made creatures hide in the dark or run toward the light. The belief that understanding fear was the key to understanding life itself. Archivist had worked in the archive for 300 years. She was tall and thin, with skin that changed color based on the emotions of those around her. When someone felt afraid near her, her skin turned a deep purple. When they felt calm, she became a soft gray. This was how her species worked. They did not feel fear themselves. They could only experience it through others. This made the perfect archivists. They could study fear without being afraid. They could hold terror in their hands like scientists holding a sample under a microscope. Had seen every kind of fear the galaxy had to offer. The species feared silence. Complete quiet drove them mad within hours. The swarm feared being alone. A single separated from its group would die from the stress within days. They could not handle imperfect numbers. Showing them a calculation with a remainder could send them into shock. Every species had logical fears. Evolution built these fears into them for protection. Fear of predators kept creatures alive. Fear of heights stopped them from falling. Fear of the dark protected them from things that hunted in shadows. It all made sense. It could all be cataloged. Then the humans arrived. Remembered the day the first human data came into the archive. It was supposed to be routine. A new species had joined the galactic community and the archive needed to update its records. She had expected the usual list. Humans would fear death. They would fear predators. They would fear things that could hurt them. This was normal. This was expected. The first files seemed to confirm this. Humans feared snakes and spiders. They feared deep water and high places. They feared being alone in the dark. Standard survival fears. Nothing special. But then more data came in. Found references to something called a haunted house. At first, she thought it was a mistranslation. The documents described buildings where humans went to experience fear. They walked through dark rooms. Actors dressed as monsters jumped out at them. Machines created scary sounds and fake blood and terrible smells. The humans screamed and ran and felt genuine terror. And then they paid money for this experience. Ran the data through the translation system 3 times. There was no error. Humans deliberately entered buildings designed to scare them. They stood in long lines to do this. They brought their friends and family. Children participated. It was considered entertainment. She pulled more files: horror movies, scary stories, roller coasters, extreme sports, skydiving, an activity called bungee jumping where humans tied elastic cords to their legs and jumped off bridges, Halloween, something called a fear factor eating challenge. The data kept coming, and none of it made sense. Called an emergency meeting with the Archive Council. 7 senior gathered in the central chamber, their skins shifting through confused patterns of color as presented her findings. "This cannot be accurate," said Elder. His skin had turned a sickly yellow, the color of deep confusion. No species seeks fear voluntarily. Fear exists to drive creatures away from danger. A species that runs toward fear would not survive long enough to develop intelligence. "The data is," replied. "I have checked it many times. Humans not only seek fear, they have built entire industries around it. They gather in groups specifically to experience terror together. They rate these experiences and share them with others. The most frightening attractions receive the most customers." "Perhaps they are simply broken," suggested Archivist. She was younger than only 80 years in the archive. "A species-wide malfunction. It happens sometimes." A malfunction that severe would have ended their species long ago, said. But humans are thriving. They have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. They are clever and adaptive. They cannot be broken. There must be something else happening here. The council debated for several days. Some believed the humans were simply confused about what fear meant. Perhaps their word for fear translated incorrectly. Perhaps what they called fear was actually something else entirely. But it studied the biological data. When humans went through haunted houses, their bodies showed all the signs of genuine fear. Their hearts beat faster, stress hormones flooded their systems, their muscles tensed for fight or flight, they sweated, they screamed. By every measurable standard, they were experiencing real terror. And they loved it. Proposed a field research mission. She wanted to send a team to Earth to observe these haunted houses directly. The council approved her request with some reluctance. Several members worried about what they might find. Be careful, Elder warned her. I have seen many strange things in my 400 years, but I have never seen a species that plays with fear. There is something different about these humans, something that worries me. Assembled a small team, volunteered immediately, eager for her first off-world assignment. 2 other junior archivists joined them. They prepared translation devices and recording equipment and clothing that would help them blend in with the human population. The journey to Earth took several weeks. During that time, studied everything she could find about human culture. She learned about their history, their art, their music, and their literature. Much of it referenced fear in some way. They had been writing scary stories since they first learned to write. They had been telling scary stories since they first learned to speak. One human artist had said something that stuck in his mind. We make monsters so we can feel brave when we face them. She did not fully understand what this meant. Monsters were dangerous. Facing them was not bravery but foolishness. A sensible creature avoided monsters entirely. But humans were not sensible. This was becoming increasingly clear. Their ship entered Earth's atmosphere on the first day of October. Learned that this entire month was dedicated to fear-based entertainment. The humans called the final day Halloween, and it appeared to be one of their most popular holidays. For 31 days, humans covered their homes with fake corpses and plastic skeletons and carved vegetables designed to look like faces. They hung fake spiders from their ceilings. They played scary music through speakers on their lawns. From orbit, the entire planet seemed to be preparing for some kind of fear celebration. This is remarkable, whispered as they descended. Her skin had turned a deep purple, overwhelmed by the fear data radiating from the planet below. There is so much fear here, but it is strange. It feels different from what I expected. Understood what she meant. The fear coming from Earth was intense, but it was not pure. It was mixed with something else, something warm and excited and almost joyful. For the first time in 300 years, wondered if she might have found something the archive had never seen before. A new kind of fear, or perhaps a new relationship with fear entirely. Their ship landed in a human city called Salem. The humans there, had learned, had a special connection to fear and darkness. It seemed like the perfect place to begin their research. As they stepped off the ship, disguised as human tourists, saw a sign pointing toward something called Terror on the Wharf, the scariest haunted house in New England. A line of humans stretched around the block, waiting to get inside. They were laughing and talking and taking pictures of each other. Several wore costumes that made them look like corpses. Children bounced with excitement. Stared at them for a long moment. Her skin shifted through colors she did not recognize, emotions she could not name. Begin recording, she said quietly. I believe we are about to witness something that will change the archive forever. Part 2. The line for the haunted house moved slowly, and her team stood among the humans, trying to look normal while their recording devices captured everything. The humans around them were strange and wonderful and deeply confusing. A young human female stood in front of them. She wore a shirt that said, "I love horror," and carried a large bag shaped like a coffin. Her face was painted to look like a skull. She turned to her companion, another female with bright red hair, and said something that found fascinating. "I hope this one actually scares me. Last year's was kind of disappointing." Translator worked perfectly, but the meaning escaped her. The human hoped to be scared. She would be disappointed if the fear was not strong enough. This was backwards. This was wrong. This broke every rule of psychology that had ever learned. Skin had turned so dark purple it was almost black. She leaned close to and whispered, "I can feel their emotions. They are excited, genuinely excited, like children waiting for a gift." "Record everything," said. "We must understand this." They waited in line for 2 hours. During that time, observed hundreds of human interactions. Friends dared each other to go first. Couples held hands for comfort that they seemed to want. Parents explained to children what to expect, building anticipation. Everyone discussed their favorite scary experiences from the past. Fear, realized, was a shared activity for humans. They did not experience it alone. They sought out others to be afraid with. The fear became a kind of glue that held them together. Finally, they reached the entrance. A human male dressed as a corpse explained the rules. No touching the actors. No running. No flash photography. And most importantly, if you became too scared, you could say mercy and an actor would guide you to an exit. The humans around nodded at these rules as if they were completely normal. An exit word, a safety mechanism. The humans had built emergency escapes into their fear experience. They wanted to be scared, but they wanted limits. They wanted control. Filed this observation away as deeply important. The inside of the haunted house was dark. The walls were narrow. Strange sounds came from hidden speakers. The air smelled like smoke and something metallic that was probably meant to be blood. A figure jumped out from behind a wall. It was dressed as a rotting corpse with fake skin peeling from its face. It screamed at them. The human screamed back. Nearly collapsed. The wave of fear that hit her was overwhelming. Her skin flashed through a dozen colors in seconds. But underneath the fear there was something else. Something she had never felt before. Joy, pure, genuine joy. The humans were afraid and happy at the same time. These emotions existed together in their minds. They fed each other. The fear made the joy stronger. The joy made the fear bearable. Caught before she fell, "Are you all right?" "I do not understand," gasped. "They feel both things at once. How do they feel both things at once?" They continued through the haunted house. Each room was designed to trigger different fears. One room was filled with fake spiders. Another had clown figures everywhere. A third was designed to look like a medical experiment gone wrong. Human actors played dead bodies coming back to life. The humans screamed at every turn. They grabbed each other. They laughed nervously. They said things like, "Oh my God," and "I can't look," and "That was amazing." In one room, a human male became so scared that he said mercy in a shaky voice. An actor immediately broke character. She turned on a small light and spoke gently. "It's okay, you're safe. Let me show you to the exit. You did great." The scared human nodded. His friends patted his back with genuine affection. There was no shame in his fear, no mockery. His companions seemed almost proud of him for knowing his limit. Watched this exchange with fascination. The humans had created a complete system. Fear was encouraged but not forced. Limits were respected. The experience was designed to push people to the edge but not over it. This was not reckless. This was careful. This was intentional. The haunted house ended with a final scare. A figure dropped from the ceiling directly in front of them. The humans screamed one last time, and then they walked through a door into bright light and cool air. The exit area was filled with humans who had just finished the experience. They were talking excitedly. Many were buying photographs that had been taken of them at the scariest moments. They looked at pictures of themselves screaming and laughed. "Look at your face," one human said to another. "You were so scared." "I know, it was awesome." Stood very still. She had just walked through a building designed to create terror. She had watched humans experience genuine fear, the kind that triggered survival instincts. And now they were buying photographs of that fear to remember it forever. She needed to understand why. Over the next 2 weeks, the research team visited 17 more haunted houses. They attended horror movie screenings. They went to events called escape rooms, where humans were locked in spaces and had to solve puzzles while scary things happened around them. They watched humans tell each other frightening stories around fires at night. The data accumulated rapidly, and patterns began to emerge. First, humans never sought fear alone. Every fear activity was social. Even horror movies were watched with friends. Even solo visitors to haunted houses experienced fear alongside strangers. Fear was a communal experience. Second, human fear activities always had limits. The haunted house ended. The movie finished. The roller coaster stopped. There was always a point where the fear stopped and safety returned. Humans did not seek endless terror. They sought controlled bursts of fear followed by relief. Third, fear made humans feel connected to each other. The humans who went through haunted houses together seemed closer afterward. They had shared something intense. They had survived something together. The fear became a bonding experience. Fourth, after experiencing fear, humans felt genuinely better. Their stress decreased. Their mood improved. They reported feeling more alive and more grateful for their normal lives. The fear seemed to reset something inside them. Spent many nights reviewing these patterns, she began to form a theory. Human life, she realized, was not very dangerous anymore. In ancient times, humans faced real threats every day: predators, starvation, disease, weather, war. Their bodies evolved to handle constant danger. Fear kept them alive. But modern humans had eliminated most of these threats. They lived in safe homes with abundant food. Predators could not reach them. Medicine treated their diseases. Their fear response still existed, but it had nothing to fight. So the humans created artificial fears. They built haunted houses and made horror movies and invented extreme sports. They gave their fear response something to do, something safe, something with limits. The haunted house, realized, was a kind of exercise. Just as humans exercise their muscles to keep them strong, they exercised their fear response to keep it healthy. But this was only part of the answer. It explained why humans might seek fear. It did not explain why they enjoyed it so much. For that answer needed to dig deeper. She began interviewing humans directly. "Why do you like being scared?" she asked, pretending to be a researcher studying human psychology. This was technically true. The answers varied, but certain themes repeated. "It makes me feel alive," one human said. "Everything is so clear when you're scared. All the small problems disappear. You're just there in that moment feeling everything." "I like knowing I can handle it," another said. "When I come out the other end, I feel stronger, like I proved something to myself." "It's fun to be scared with my friends," a third said. "We laugh about it afterward. We have this shared experience. It brings us closer." These answers confused at first, but slowly she began to understand. Humans did not simply tolerate fear. They had transformed it. They had taken something painful and made it meaningful. They had found a way to turn terror into connection and growth and joy. This was not a malfunction. This was an adaptation, and it was unlike anything in the archive's records. Knew she needed to report her findings, but she also knew that the council would not believe her without proof. She needed one more piece of evidence, something that showed the full scope of what humans had done with their relationship to fear. She began researching the holiday called Halloween. What she found changed everything. Part 3. Halloween arrived on October 31st. Had been preparing for this day since she first read about it in the archive files. Now she stood on a suburban street in a human city called Portland and watched something that should have been impossible. An entire civilization was pretending to be afraid. Children walked from house to house in costumes, some dressed as monsters, some dressed as ghosts, some dressed as things could not identify, creatures with too many eyes, creatures with no faces, creatures that seemed designed to trigger every fear response a human brain possessed. And everywhere there was candy. Humans gave children candy for dressing as terrifying things. Adults participated too. They decorated their homes with symbols of death, gravestones in front yards, skeletons hanging from trees, fake blood on windows. One house had a mechanical witch that cackled whenever someone approached. Walked through the streets with her recording device running constantly. Her skin shifted through colors so rapidly that she had to wear long sleeves to hide it. The emotions coming from these humans were overwhelming. Fear and joy and excitement and warmth all mixed together in ways her species had never imagined. She stopped outside a house where a family had set up an elaborate display. The front yard had been transformed into a graveyard. Fog machines created mist around fake tombstones. Spooky music played from hidden speakers. And in the center of it all, the family stood in matching zombie costumes, greeting visitors. A small child approached the display. She could not have been more than 5 years old. She wore a princess costume with wings. When the fog machine activated, she screamed and grabbed her father's hand. Expected the father to comfort the child, to remove her from the scary situation. This was what any sensible creature would do. Instead, the father knelt down beside the girl. "It's okay," he said. "It's just pretend, see? Look at the zombie family. They're not real monsters, they're just people in costumes, and they have candy for you." The child looked at the zombie family. One of them waved at her and smiled. The child waved back uncertainly. "Do you want to go say hi?" the father asked. "I'll be right here with you." The girl thought about it. Her fear was obvious in her face, but so was her curiosity, so was her desire to be brave. She walked slowly toward the zombie family. They handed her candy and complimented her costume. She said thank you in a tiny voice. Then she ran back to her father with triumph in her eyes. "I did it," she shouted. "Did you see? I wasn't scared." She had been scared, could feel it, but the child had walked through that fear. She had come out the other side, and now she felt proud and strong and ready to face the next house. Understood then what she was witnessing. This was not a holiday about fear. This was a holiday about courage. The humans were teaching their children to be brave. They created safe fears and helped their children face them. They showed them that scary things could be survived, that terror had limits, that they were stronger than they knew. Halloween was training. It was practice for a species that knew their children would face real fears someday. Loss, failure, death, pain, the unavoidable terrors of being alive. And so humans practiced. They built haunted houses. They told scary stories. They dressed as monsters. They looked into the darkness and laughed. The archive had never seen anything like this. Returned to her ship that night and began writing her report. She worked for 3 days without stopping. When she finished, she had created an entirely new classification system for human fear responses. She called it Collaborative Fear Relationship. The document was 40 pages long, but the core idea was simple. Most species treated fear as an enemy. They avoided it whenever possible. They ran from it. They hid from it. They let it control them. Humans treated fear as a tool. They faced it deliberately. They played with it. They used it to make themselves stronger and bring themselves closer together. They had taken the most ancient survival mechanism in existence and transformed it into something productive. Fear made humans braver. This was the paradox. This was the impossible thing. By experiencing controlled fear, humans became better at handling uncontrolled fear. They practiced being scared so they would know what to do when real scares came. This report included recommendations for other species. They who feared silence might benefit from brief exposure to quiet environments. If they practiced with small silences, perhaps larger silences would not destroy them. The swarm might try short separations. A few minutes alone, then a few more, then a few more after that. The human approach could work for others. Fear could be domesticated. Terror could be trained. But it required something that most species lacked: the willingness to walk toward what scared them instead of away. The Archive Council receives report with great interest. Elder read it 3 times before speaking. "This is remarkable," he said finally, "and troubling. If humans have truly achieved this relationship with fear, they are more formidable than we realized." "How so?" asked one of the junior council members. "Fear is our greatest limiter," explained. "It stops us from taking risks. It keeps us small and safe and unchanging. A species that has conquered fear in this way, they will go further. They will dare more. They will face challenges that would paralyze others." Nodded, the humans have a saying: feel the fear and do it anyway. They acknowledge that fear exists. They do not pretend to be fearless, but they act despite the fear. They have turned courage into a skill that can be practiced. The council debated for several weeks. In the end, they made 2 decisions. First, they updated the archive's entry on humanity. The new classification came with a warning label that had suggested, "Approach with caution. Species may attempt to frighten you for social bonding purposes." Second, they approved request to establish a permanent research station on Earth. The human relationship with fear required further study. Other species needed to learn from it. Returned to Earth in December. The Halloween decorations had been replaced with something called Christmas decorations, but she noticed that some humans kept their fake skeletons out year-round. Old habits, it seemed, were hard to break. She set up her research station in the city of Salem. The humans there were friendly and welcoming. They seemed pleased that an alien species wanted to study their culture. Several volunteered to help with her research. One volunteer was a young human named. He worked at one of the local haunted houses as an actor. His job was to scare people. "Why do you do this work?" asked him one day. "Thought about it. I love seeing the moment when someone realizes they can handle it," he said. "They come in terrified. They think they can't do it. And then they get through it and they're so proud of themselves. I get to be part of that. I get to help people find out they're braver than they thought." "Does it not trouble you to frighten people?" "It would if I thought I was hurting them, but I'm not. I'm giving them a gift, a safe space to face their fears. That's valuable. That matters." Recorded this conversation. She played it back many times over the following months. A safe space to face fears. A gift. The humans had built an entire culture around helping each other be brave. Spring came and began receiving visitors from other species. Word of her research had spread through the archive network. Academics from a dozen worlds wanted to see the human-fear relationship for themselves. She took them to haunted houses. She showed them horror movies. She introduced them to humans who told scary stories for a living. The visitors were universally amazed and confused. Some could not handle the experience. A delegate fled after 5 minutes in a haunted house. The fake silence in one of the rooms was too much. But others adapted. A swarm member discovered that horror movies could be watched alone in small doses without permanent damage. The fear was real, but the danger was not. It was practice. It was exercise. Watched these experiments with satisfaction. The human approach was spreading. Other species were learning to face their fears instead of hiding from them. She wrote a second report to the council, proposing a formal exchange program. Humans would visit other worlds to help design fear exposure programs. Other species would visit Earth to study human techniques. The council approved the program unanimously. Fear management became an official field of study. The archive grew a new wing dedicated entirely to therapeutic fear experiences. 10 years after her first visit to Earth, stood in front of a Halloween haunted house once again. This time, she was not there as a researcher. She was there as a participant. Had designed this particular haunted house. He had consulted with to make it accessible to different species. There were rooms with different fear types, darkness for some, silence for others, crowds, isolation, heights, all of it carefully controlled, all of it completely safe. Beings from 12 different worlds waited in line together. They were nervous. They were excited. They had come from across the galaxy to experience something that only humans had figured out. They were there to practice being brave. Walked into the haunted house beside a who had never experienced silence voluntarily. The first room was perfectly quiet. They began to shake, took their appendage in her hand. "You are not alone," she said. "I am here with you. The silence will end. You will survive this." They nodded. They walked through the silent room together. 30 seconds of quiet that felt like an eternity. And then they emerged into a room filled with sound and light, and they laughed with relief. "I did it," they said. "I did not die. I did not go mad. I faced the silence and I survived." "Yes," said, "you did." She thought about the little human girl in the princess costume, the one who had walked toward the zombie family despite her fear. Humans started this practice young. They taught their children that fear was not the end, that scary things could be faced, that courage was a muscle that grew stronger with use. Now other species were learning the same lesson. The galaxy was becoming braver, one haunted house at a time. Skin turned a color she had never seen before. It was the color of hope mixed with determination. The color of fear transformed into something beautiful. She had come to Earth to study human fear. Instead, she had learned about human courage, about the incredible power of facing your terrors instead of running from them, about the bonds that formed when people were scared together. The humans had given the galaxy a gift. They had shown that fear was not the enemy. It was a teacher, a tool, a friend that helped you grow, and intended to help spread that gift to every corner of known space. Outside the haunted house, the line of visitors from a dozen worlds grew longer. They had come to be scared. They would leave feeling brave. This, realized, was what the archive had been searching for all along. Not a catalog of fears, but a guide to overcoming them. The humans had written that guide, and now the whole galaxy could read it.